never seen a live meltdown like this, Whoopi Goldberg and The View just realized how a judicial system works, and it sent them flying off the handle over the Supreme Court, deciding to just hear out Donald Trump's presidential immunity case. But aside from the backdrop and technicalities of this particular development, I think this segment reveals just how obvious the panel is to how the law really functions in the country. Just take a look at this.
Yesterday, the Supreme Court agreed to hear you-know-whose case for total presidential immunity from prosecution. It has halted proceedings in the election interference case against him. Now, let's look at a scenario where the Supreme Court says, yes, he has all those rights. He is immune from everything. Yeah. You know what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
Whoa. He could throw every Republican in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, he could. I mean, no. This is not
because
a good
he would
thing.
be immune.
Because he'd have total, he could go. What this means is he could do anything.
Yeah.
Is that what Whoopi thinks legal immunity is? You can go from being a president to basically being the god that no one can touch? Obviously not. The debate over presidential immunity is highly contested, but the rationale for it is to protect the president from being dragged down by frivolous and politically motivated lawsuits so that he can do his job.
When they talk about threat to democracy, that's your real threat to democracy. And I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple.
Nowhere in any constitution or legal precedent does it say that actions taken in what's called the outer perimeter of the president's official duty is protected from legal action. And in the two major legal precedents we have of the court's decisions in U.S. history, being Nixon versus Fitzgerald in 1982 and Clinton versus Jones in 1997, it speaks to the civil cases and not criminal ones. The president still is not above the law, and he doesn't become a dictator. An idea as outlandish as that should already click in your mind that it cannot be true, and it is not true. But in the case of Donald Trump seeking immunity to have the election interference case against him delayed, there's more nuances that we need to explore. That's because there's a string of developments starting not just from the DC court earlier rejecting the case for immunity, but also in the haste that special counsel Jack Smith has shown to get over with his appeal to make sure Trump is out of legal recourse options when the trial does start.
Unfortunately, some people are saying the motivation is that there are certain conservative justices that have been appointed by Trump that want to help him. And because we know the end result is if this case is not resolved by the time of the election, and he, God forbid, becomes the president of the United States, the Justice Department policy is that you cannot indict nor put on trial a sitting president, right? And so it's his get out of jail.
He could throw him in jail.
But it's his get out of jail free card.
No, I'm saying Biden could throw him. See, this is a slippery slope because if they give him this immunity.
Just 3 of the 9 Supreme Court judges were appointed by Donald Trump, so I'm not sure how that argument stands. But even if you take a step back, you realize that it was actually special counsel Jack Smith that has been pushing the Supreme Court to hear and announce a decision on the legal immunity case for a few months now. And you know why that is? It's because even Jack Smith understood that the earlier that this legal opening for Donald Trump closes, the sooner the election subversion case against the former president can start before his potential re-election to the presidency. So in that sense, there's actually not a lot for Donald Trump to rejoice seeing the Supreme Court deciding to take up the hearing on it. Just this month, he's already received bad news against his motion from a DC trial court, with the judges deciding that Trump's election interference case violated, quote, applicable criminal laws, and therefore he could not seek immunity. On this particular point, perhaps it's fair to say that Sunny Hostin served as a rare voice of reason on the panel, being an attorney herself.
Another thing that, to your question, why did they take it? I'd like to try to think positively about this for a moment. And I think that the Supreme Court perhaps took it because they want, in the event that he is convicted, which I think he would be, given the overwhelming evidence against him, they want to make sure that he doesn't have an appealable issue because he gets due process of law just like all of us. And so if the Supreme Court takes it, they decide he does not have presidential immunity. Now he gets convicted. He then can't on appeal say, you got to let me out of jail because I didn't get due process. So that's how I'm trying to look at this in a very positive way.
Donald Trump himself wanted the Supreme Court to block the lower court's rulings against his immunity plea. In fact, it is this decision by the lower court that both Trump and special counsel Jack Smith would be happy being taken to the Supreme Court. Though for different reasons, Trump obviously benefits from a decision in his favor for legal immunity because it could mean protection from the election interference case or the possibility of disqualification. Moreover, if the hearing on immunity delays the case by a few months, Trump stands to gain if he is reelected in November. On the other hand, Jack Smith would rather have the Supreme Court decide the case quickly and leave no room for Trump to claim immunity, which would close one of the last legal options that Donald Trump would have in the face of the prosecution. You can see how eager the special counsel is to have a decision on it announced by the Supreme Court by the fact that just a few months ago in December of 2023, he asked for Trump's plea for immunity quickly leapfrogged into the country's highest court. That request was rejected on the 22nd of December in one brief sentence, striking a blow to his attempts to have the case started as early as March 4th.
I think it's a bad look for them. Yeah. It's a very
take it?
to have taken this, because this, in some of their other rulings, which I wondered about, people say, well, we don't want it to look like we're showing favoritism, so we're looking at this in a very deep way. And suddenly now, it doesn't feel like they're looking at it in a deep way. This feels like, oh, we got to help him do this.
I find it very depressing. I find it depressing.
Don't be depressed.
No,
Can I say one thing?
I find it depressing because I feel like not only are we alone in the universe, we're now alone in the country.
You can bet Whoopi Goldberg would not be saying the same thing if she understood how the Supreme Court could potentially announce a decision she likes. It's not about the idea of whether it looks good or bad to the outside observer, but the fact that there is a step-by-step legal process that has to be followed to the letter. And with every step that is skipped or not done by the book, it gives Donald Trump a legal escape hatch to file more appeals and potentially create more delays. In the United States, the Supreme Court is regarded as the ultimate legal arbiter, and that means a ruling against Donald Trump's plea for immunity would leave no room for more appeals to a higher court. As Donald Trump enters what is potentially the most decisive year for his political future, you're going to see attempts by him to seek any legal refuge he can. But the mere fact that the courts are willing to listen to his appeals doesn't mean the greater trust in the legal system can be dented at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Courts don't work on the basis of what looks good, as Whoopi just said, but on the legal steps every time. It is that deeper understanding of how the judiciary works that makes you see how it is far above the political disputes happening underneath.